Saturday two gamer. It's a wild card weekend, man, and it's not a bad way to kick it off. I think this first game is going to be a lot of fun. We got the Browns taking on the Houston Texans, and then the second one, Dolphins Chiefs, man. So one should have a shitload of points, the other probably not so much.
This might be one of the coldest playoff games we've ever seen in the NFL. We could see negative weather and up to 15-mile-per-hour winds. It's going to be cold as hell, man. Let's get into it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, we've got two pretty interesting games. Browns are hot with Joe Flacco. Amari Cooper should be back for this one, going into Texas, Houston, against the Texans indoors. Don't have to deal with any weather there. Coach of the Year Bowl kind of going on with that one. That should be an interesting game. Amari Cooper hasn't played since he lit up the Texans in week 16. So he's going to be popular. Amari Cooper is in this one. Dolphins, man, they were really wishing they won that game against the Bills, because now they got to go into Arrowhead against the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce in some cold ass weather. The Chiefs are favored in that one. Thoughts on both of these games, man? This feels like a really fun slate. Like, we do have the 3-game Saturday slate that we're going to do. We're going to do a show on that. Then we have the Monday night game as well. And then there's obviously a whole weekend slate. This is my favorite slate of all this wild card weekend. You agree?
Yeah, I actually do, mostly because that first game, the Browns Texans, it's kind of weird. I never thought Browns Texans would be a game I'd be excited for to kick off a playoff weekend. But look, man, CJ Stroud's pretty exciting. What they're doing with that offense is, and we've seen the home road splits with the Browns have been absolutely crazy, man. So their defense sucks on the road. This game could be an absolute shootout, man. I'm excited for it.
Let's get into
Then obviously
this.
Dolphins Chiefs is Dolphins Chiefs, man.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Let's just jump right into this and get into Cleveland Browns going into Texans home indoors. 44.5 point total here. Dude, it feels like to me, it feels like Stroud is the man, and I really think the Texans can win this game. Now, Cleveland, their defense is obviously great. Joe Flacco coming out, slinging the ball 40-plus times. Amari Cooper looking good. But even without Amari Cooper, they looked good. With Njoku, Elijah Moore, guys like that. We have some injuries to talk about, obviously, here for both games. But this one, the list is a little bit longer. It's a 2.5-point spread here in favor of the Browns on the road. I think that's probably right. Where are you leaning on this game, man, before we get into this matchup specifically?
I'm leaning towards Houston. I do think Houston wins this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland did either. But look, it's I don't know. It's been a while since Houston's had a playoff game, a home playoff game, and it's going to be led by the offensive rookie of the year. So I think this is just. I don't think that Houston's one and done. So I actually might put some money on the money line here for Houston to win outright, to be honest.
You think Deshaun Watson's going to be on the sidelines? And if so, how bad is he going to get booed in this game?
I don't know. Hopefully they announce he has surgery or something that he has to attend and needs to stay home. But that's probably not a situation that he should be in. But what does he know about being in situations he's supposed to?
So, Coach of the Year, odds are right now, I couldn't find it on a lot of books when I looked it up, but Stefanski seems to be the favorite. But if DeMeco Ryans wins this game, man, how does he not win Coach of the Year? Taking a team that has been terrible the last few years in his first year, developing a rookie quarterback to absolutely dominate. I mean, you got to think that DeMeco Ryans, if they win this game, he's going to be the odds-on favorite. Now, let's look at obviously these guys played week 16. We all know about this. Browns won that 36-22. Generally speaking, the Texans' defense, coverage-wise, is pretty good. They're a top 10 ranked according to PFF coverage defense, but they sure as hell gave it up to Amari Cooper in that game, setting a franchise record, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns. He crushed. You have to think DeMeco Ryans and this defense is going to, they're going to say, all right, you guys going to beat us? It's not going to be because of Amari Cooper. I know that saying that out loud and on paper, that seems a little bit easier than actually accomplishing that. But dude, I mean, how much has this team been game planning to try to stop Amari Cooper since that Week 16 game? I still think Amari Cooper probably comes out and has a pretty good game, and on a slate like this, where he's probably, in my opinion, going to be 70-80% owned, you could think about fading him potentially. I just don't know if it's necessary. We also going to have Tyreek Hill that's going to be heavily owned, that is not in the best of game environments. You could maybe choose to fade a guy like that. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But when it comes to actual matchups here, man, let's talk about these home and road splits, though, dude. We can't, let's not bury the lead here. This is absolutely insane. Talk to me about this, man. This feels like why is this happening? The only thing I could see is the major differences is at home, the Browns have gotten 32 sacks versus on the road 17. And, you've had some of those games with bad quarterback play that they lost on the road. But besides that, this team's getting beat up. 29.7 points per game on the road, their defense, versus at home only giving up about 14. Now, it didn't help playing the Bengals, with your backups in the final week, giving up 31 points. But that didn't really make too big of a difference, considering this team just is not doing very good on the road. Why is that, Ellie?
Yeah, man. I don't know. Honestly, if I did know, or if I had the solution, I'd be on the defensive staff for the Browns, right? Because they've been trying to figure it out all year, and it's not like they played some excellent talent. I mean, look at some of these, right? At the Bengals in Week 18, that's one thing. At the Texans, that's one thing. LA, yeah, Denver was improving when we saw them, but still, right? And then you got Seattle, you have Indy on there, and Pittsburgh early in the season. So it's not like they're necessarily running through a gauntlet. I mean, some of the teams are pretty good, but look, man, I've never seen anything like it in really all my years, whatever, watching the NFL, paying attention to it. I've never seen a defensive split like this. This is some NBA shit where the Rockets were 18-5 at home last year, but 3-44 on the road. That's the shit that we're seeing. It's just one of those things. It's just really odd. And that said, even with this game, right? So they had the 31 point at the Bengals, right? And then at Houston, they held them to only 22. You'd think that 22 would have helped their overall average, but it only brought them down from 30.1 points per game to 29.7 on allowed on the road. So it's something we just haven't seen improve at all. And I think you got to just keep banking that their defense is going to suck on the road until we see something otherwise.
And you think okay, well, hey, maybe, them playing at home, the outdoors, maybe there's something going on there. Does this team collapse when they face teams that play in domes? Not really. We've seen these dome games. They've won 2 out of the 3 on the road. They lost to the Rams in LA in that game, but it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. And if we look at these splits, like I said, there's the sacks are a big difference, but interceptions are the same. If you look at rushing touchdowns given up, they've given up 10 on the road as opposed to 5. And here's the big one. They've given up 15 passing touchdowns on the road as opposed to 8. So I don't know what it is. It's clearly something, though. Something we got to talk about here. But
actually, I do have something. This might be a little anecdotal, but when home teams do increase their passing rate a little bit. Let me see if I can find that stat. Maybe that has something to do with it. Anyways, that's anecdotal, but I think if we anticipate Houston's going to increase their volume of passing attempts, then obviously that's something that is relevant to this slate, right?
Yeah, I mean, now PJ Walker, DTR, Deshaun Watson, these guys were all playing during some of those road games that they lost. And how much does bad quarterback play put into that? I mean, turnovers, things like that. Yeah, obviously that could be a thing. I just, the quarterbacks aren't playing defense, so they still got to stop these teams. And they've done a pretty good job at home doing it, just haven't done it on the road when it comes to points. Coverage-wise, this defense is good, man. They're 5th in coverage ranking according to PFF. The run defense, though, they're ranked 28th. Now, when it comes to actual fantasy points versus the position of running back, it's 15th. But that seems like their weakness. That seems like this Houston team with these 2 running backs, you got Singletary most likely going to get most of the run, and then maybe a little bit of Pierce sprinkled in. looks like that's a decent matchup for them. But when it comes to pass rush, they're number 1 ranked. On the other side of it, this Houston Texans defense is not a bad defense by any means, but they have their weaknesses, and they have their times of where they will give up 275 yards to Amari Cooper. They're 28th in tackling, 16th in run defense, 9th in coverage, 11th in pass rush. Now, if you look at this quote from D'Amico Ryans after that infamous Amari Cooper game, when you don't get pressure on the quarterback, no matter who's out there, it's going to be a long day. He said, Flacco had a really good game against us. We didn't pressure him at all. He stood back in the pocket. He had all day to throw the football, and we weren't really supposed to be in coverage. So, look, if you're Houston, you find ways to attack this offensive line that's pretty damn good. You find ways to attack them, and maybe we see some more blitzing in this game. I don't know. But that's probably, it's one of these things with Flacco. Like, he's thrown an interception in every single game he started. He's in 2 of those, he threw 2 or more. So if they can cause Flacco to make some mistakes, fumble the ball, he's fumbled the ball a couple times this year, that might be their path to success. Any thoughts on that matchup-wise? What's jumping out to you? It seems like we can attack maybe both sides of the run game here a little bit. But a guy like Nico Collins, we can't avoid him, dude. He's been the best wide receiver in the league, basically, with CeeDee Lamb since week 9. This guy's on fire. What are some of your matchups you're looking to key here?
So one of the things that I'm really looking at here is I think Devin Singletary is a guy that's kind of getting overlooked a little bit. I think people are getting a little hyped up on just the Cleveland offense in general and just the passing game. We know Joe Flacco is going to go out and throw it a bunch, and I think that kind of makes us focus a little bit more on running it back with some of the pass catchers on the Houston side. But go back up. What is this? A 2.5 point spread? It really just isn't enough for me to really to miss out on Devin Singletary, right?
Yeah.
And just if you're doing some of the playoff best ball format too, he's a guy that's kind of dropping in there. It's just he's just an interesting one to me in a matchup that I'm more considering, right? Because on the classic slate, he's still going to be a little bit chalky, but he might give you a little bit more leverage than some of these other guys that are just going to be owned out the ass from both sides of the ball. These passing games are going to be so owned that I think it's going to be hard. I think people are just going to overlook the running backs a little bit here.
Yeah, and Jerome Ford, look, like we know Flacco was going to throw the ball probably 40 plus times in this game, but this team likes to run the ball. They like to get the running backs involved. Jerome Ford is a guy that you're probably not going to see anybody playing much of. And we saw last week Jonathan Taylor get 188 yards. This team overall got over 200 yards rushing against this Houston defense. Ford, to me, is a guy that I will be interested in GPPs for sure. And, the run defense is ranked 16th, kind of middle of the pack, but tackling 28th, that's not good. That's not good. So it looks like Ward, when it comes to cornerbacks, we got Newsome in the slot, most likely. So if we get Woods back, whoever ends up playing the slot, whether it's Woods or Hutchinson, you got pretty much a better matchup there from Newsome. We saw last week the Colts kind of shut down the slot guys for Houston. It's probably not a good situation if Woods doesn't play here for the slot guys. We didn't really see him do much in Hutchinson, and Mechie's playing outside. But if we get back full strength here for Houston, that's going to be important for those guys. Now, Nico Collins moves around, but Denzel Ward is left cornerback only. So, maybe we'll get half the snaps, Ward versus Collins, but Ward doesn't move. So Nico, we'll see what happens there. I like Nico in this matchup, obviously. Let's move on here. We'll get to injuries in a minute. Let's move on to this next game. You got anything else to add here before we move on?
No, I'm good, man.
All right, so Miami going into Kansas City, Arrowhead. We've talked about this. Everybody's going to be talking about this. Obviously, we got a weather game here as far as cold. We're not going to see any precipitation or snow or anything like that. But when it comes to cold, it's going to be cold as hell. It could be 0 degrees around kickoff. And with the wind chill possibly getting up to maybe 15-mile-per-hour winds, we got to wait and see how that goes. But it's going to be cold as hell. And this Dolphins team, they play in Florida. They live in Florida. They've lost 10 straight games in games under 40 degrees. How much of this narrative are you buying into? And thoughts on, you and I have looked this up a little bit. We haven't really got a conclusive answer. But thoughts on these totals dropping in these freezing weather type games? Not 30 degrees, not 20 degrees. I'm talking 0 or minus.
Yeah, I mean, we found an interesting link, an interesting article. I'm not sure the validity of it. I mean, obviously the dude ran the numbers, but he said that there's really no correlation between the weather and points scored. That said, like I'm that's an NFL, like you're measuring at the NFL level. You're not looking at the individual level in certain matchups, right? Like, so I want to see more data on what happens when Miami Dolphins go into negative weather and start playing. They're not used to that, right? They haven't been warming up for that at all. And so, that's something that I don't know. I think there's going to be a slight impact here. But that said, like I don't know that that justifies the question marks there. I don't know, and even the question marks that we've seen with Miami throughout the year, I don't know if any of that necessarily justifies a 4.5 point spread or a 4 point spread. The Chiefs haven't necessarily looked excellent themselves. So I don't know. I think this is a potential to be a closer game. Now, that said, like I do find it kind of interesting that both these games have the same total of 44 points. So that's something I'm very interested in. I'm going to keep a kind of a closer eye on as we get closer to lock. I want to see if there's any movement on those lines.
Yeah, now obviously earlier this season in Germany, the Chiefs won in that Tyreek revenge game type thing. But now Tyreek's going back into Arrowhead. The Chiefs this year, we've watched them, dude. Their wide receivers are terrible, minus Rashid Rice. Travis Kelce has looked bad. I don't know how much to chalk that up to. He's getting old. I mean, if you just watch the tape, he looks a little slower. He's not getting as many yards after catch. But is that more so that they don't have any pass catchers that scare defenses and they're bracketing or they're double covering Kelce? It's probably a little bit of both. But this team has gotten where they are because they've played great defense and they've ran the ball pretty good. Even though this team doesn't like to run the ball, they don't run it nearly as much as they should. This is a situation where the Chiefs should come out and run the ball 25 times in this game with Pacheco. The Dolphins' run defense has been good this year, yards per carry against opposing running backs. But dude, they're banged up. They're hurt, man. Like they're missing half their line. And on the other side of things, if you're Miami, you've been struggling lately a little bit offensively because you've been banged up. Tyreek Hill's been a little banged up. Waddle's been out. Mostert's been out. If they get back to full strength, if they get Mostert back, if they get Jalen Waddle back in this one, like, dude, to me, like Mostert, a minimum of one of Mostert or Achane in this game and trying to get as much Pacheco in this game as possible, that's probably how I'm rolling. Thoughts on all that? And, like, do we have to play Tyreek Hill in a two-gamer? Probably. But I don't know how interested I am in Tua, even though a guy like that, like Tua, who, threw for the most yards in the league. He I know they can't beat good teams, but how do we not play Tua on a two-game slate a little bit in some of these large field GPPs?
Yeah, I think I'm actually a little bit higher on Miami than I guess a lot of people are. I mean, Vegas has again the 4 point spread. At the end of the day, they still have Tua, they still have Mike McDaniel, they still have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Right. The point of having all the weapons that they have is they can kind of operate off of a limited offense. Right. Devon Achane's not going to be on the field 90% of the time. He can run 45% of the snaps. Same for Mostert, and you can kind of have a little bit of depth and maybe a rotation with Waddle and Hill if you need to. And I think they take a lot of stress off each other when they are on the field, right? So again, I think like rumors of their demise have been greatly exaggerated, if you will. Like let's see them kind of again. Like I still think we also don't want to like overestimate the loss to Buffalo on Sunday, right? That game essentially would have been a rematch next week, and what at that point you're 2-0 against Buffalo in the season, and you're looking to beat the same team 3 times in the same year. Like I again, we talk about this a lot. That's a tall task. So I don't know if Mike McDaniel pulled all the bullets in his gun and shot him on last week. I think that they reserved a lot for this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Miami comes out here and is able to hang up some points on Kansas City, despite the excellent defense Kansas City has. To your point, man, they don't like to run the ball. Kansas City. And if you're not going to keep the ball out of Miami's offense's hands, and you're just going to give them opportunity for chunk plays, they're going to get one eventually. We all know that's what Tyreek Hill does, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there was a great video from Brett Coleman on YouTube last night that was released talking about the Chiefs. Just run the damn ball. Like, I know it's easier said than done, but you got Pacheco, dude. Like, this is at the time of the year where you need to rely on that guy. I don't know how much you can really rely on a rookie Rashee Rice in his first playoff game in the freezing cold, or kind of a washed up Travis Kelce at this point. But look, we got to talk about Kelce, because I know he's had some bad games lately, and he hasn't really been a factor much. But this is playoff football, dude. There's not a ton of tight ends on this slate that I absolutely love. I know we got Njoku, I know we got Schultz. But dude, Kelce might be super low owned just simply because of his recent outings and how he's been doing this year. For a one day, 2-game slate, I think we got to get to some Kelce, right? If he's low owned.
Yeah, man, I don't know how you don't. I mean, he's still one of the best plays on the slate. He's still one of the best tight ends in the league. And let's see, let's look at his numbers. I mean, let's actually look at his numbers. What did he have? He just under 1,000 yards this year. Like, I mean, that's a little bit shy of what we've seen, maybe 200 shy than 2021, right? Where he had 1125. Last year, he had 1338. And we all know that his offense this year is quite possibly the worst offense that him and Patrick Mahomes has played in. It's not quite possibly. It absolutely is the worst offense. They average 21, 22 points a game or something. But anyways, this team was built for the playoffs. I think these two, getting to the playoffs is what they needed. They're in the wild card. This is you have the opportunity to play one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, right? Like, what does he have? 7 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons that was broken this season. So I don't know, man. Especially if you're getting a discount on ownership, like on a 2-game slate, you want to play the guys that have the potential to score the most amount of points on a slate. Like, I know it's kind of like the easiest information for fantasy sports, but that's Travis Kelce. Like, I'd be scared not going into a slate with Travis Kelce, with at least being with the field and potentially over if he's low owned.
Dude, this run defense, you could probably consider for the Chiefs their weakness. They're 28th in yards per carry allowed to running backs. And for a team like Miami, I know that they have a high-powered pass offense, but dude, their run offense is pretty damn incredible. If Mostert's active, obviously Achane. Look at this number here, dude. Running backs most yards per carry in a single season in NFL history, minimum 100 carries. Devon Achane, 7.8 yards per carry. That's just a crazy ass stat. And it's a cold weather game. I don't know how well Tua is going to be able to come out and play, but I just say you feed these running backs across the board here and get 25 plus carries and see if this defense can stop them. Besides that, let's look at some of these other matchups here. Looks like Snead travels, so he's gonna probably go up against Hill. I don't think that there's any matchup in the league that Hill is not the better matchup. But to me, I would love to see, just narrative wise, I like the Chiefs. Don't get me wrong. But I'd love to see the Dolphins come in and win this game and Tyreek Hill get 200 yards receiving or something crazy in this game, going back to Arrowhead, eliminating the Chiefs. I feel like the Chiefs this year, I know they went out and got Rashee Rice as an early draft pick, but I feel like they just kind of said, we got Patrick Mahomes. Like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine with Sky Moore. We'll be fine with Tony. We'll be fine with some of these guys. We'll make Watson our number 2 wide receiver. And it's come back to really absolutely freaking bite them. And I kind of want them to lose. I do. I want to see the Dolphins move on. We've seen a lot of Chiefs. I send them to Cancun a little early here. That's my thought. Let's talk briefly about, there was that, remember that that playoff game? What was it? Seattle? Who are they playing? Who was it? Where the kicker? Oh, it was Minnesota. It was in Minnesota. Was it? I forgot the guy's name. The kicker who missed basically an extra point to lose him the game. He's basically Hauschka's talking about, and this is more so for just game theory and showdown. But these kickers, man, when it gets cold, man, that PSI drops and it feels like you're kicking a flat ball and the ball is just not going to move as far as you want it to. So figured bring that up. When it comes to these teams getting field goals, they have 2 good field goal kickers, but at the end of the game, do you trust these guys to get a 55-yarder with the game on the line? I don't know. All right, let's go to injuries here. So let me switch over. We'll get through this pretty quick. Injuries.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So first game, Kevin Stefanski told reporters that Denzel Ward was limited today with a new knee injury. Told he's okay. So it looks like we might see Denzel Ward, which is a big deal. But you got Grant Delpit out, their safety. Cedric Tillman, their young wide receiver, number 3 guy, going to be out. And Dustin Hopkins, their field goal kicker, is going to be out. As well as there's a lot, look at this list. There's a lot of dudes on this list here. And you still have Amari Cooper with the heel injury. He should play, but how much is that going to affect him? Thoughts on the Browns side here, and we'll get over to the Texans.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I want to call out, man, is I don't know that Denzel Ward being back even makes all that big of a difference. He was active for 13 games this year.
Yeah.
Right.
He
so
miss
it's not
a
like
couple, yeah.
His absence is what we're going to attribute their shitty road defense to. You know what I mean? So it obviously matters for a one-on-one matchup, but just from a team defensive perspective, I'm not going to give the Cleveland Browns their home boost just because he's back. So I think that's worth saying. Other than that, I think obviously the biggest one is Amari Cooper and just the normal starters, but I don't expect any of them to sit.
And Cedric Tillman being out is going to open up some value here that we'll talk about in a second. So Houston injuries, Will Anderson Jr. is another DMP. If they want to get pressure on Flacco, they're going to need that mofo. We saw him last week kind of in and out of the game. He was questionable coming in. He was active. We all thought he would probably play, but he kind of wasn't on the field for a lot of the game. Noah Brown is a DMP. It looks like he's trending towards being out again. So we're going to see, more Mechie. We're going to see more Hutchinson. Who knows? But Robert Woods here with the hip injury. He was DMP on Tuesday. Looks like he's limited today. Maybe we see Robert Woods come back. We'll have to wait till the Thursday, in the evening time when the practice report comes out. If he's DMP again, maybe he doesn't play, but maybe we get some Robert Woods back. You got some other guys, Beck, the fullback. I'm pretty sure he caught a touchdown last week too. Sheldon Rankins, that's a big deal. So what are we keeping an eye on here? I think Will Anderson Jr. is the biggest news, just defensively and matchup wise.
Yeah, I mean, so just random thought here, but I really think Houston had one of the best drafts that we've seen in a long time, right? You praise CJ Stroud so much, you forget that Will Anderson's on the team, but looks like Noah Brown actually is practicing today. This is Thursday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern. So okay. It looks like he is practicing. We'll keep an eye on that. And then obviously if Robert Woods is back, that changes some of our value discussions at wide receiver. But the wide receiver thing here matters again. If you watched the last show, we get in the weeds about Mechie and the other wide
Hutchinson.
receiver.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll have to keep our ears open for that. I don't love these other guys if Woods and Noah Brown is out again. But Nico Collins, it just goes to him and Schultz, basically. Let's go to the other game here. So Kadarius Toney to be limited if available. Nobody's playing him. Not even Kadarius Toney Stan over here and me would play him ever again. I'm not doing it. On the other side, obviously we know about Mostert being questionable. That's a big deal. Jalen Waddle being questionable. If I had to lean, I don't have any sort of inside information here, but if these guys are even halfway healthy, they got to be playing in this game, right? Thoughts on where you're leaning towards Mostert and Waddle, and then we'll obviously get into some of these other injuries that the Dolphins are suffering through.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's sitting for the Miami Kansas City game. It's just too important, right? This is potentially the last game of the season. I think everybody's going to have a limited practice or not practice just so that they can be ready. Until we hear otherwise, I'm just game planning for everybody in.
Armstead is, maybe questionable. He was limited in practice today. Javon Holland, that's a big deal. DMP. Xavier Howard again. He missed last week. He might miss this week. You obviously have a bunch. Van Ginkel got hurt. They still have their interior defensive linemen that are really good. Sealer and Wilkins, really good. But now they're missing Bradley Chubb, tore his ACL in meaningless garbage time against Baltimore. And then Jalen Phillips popped his Achilles a few, 5-6 weeks ago or something like that. So they're definitely banged up on the defensive side. But their offense looks to be back to full strength if they can get all their dudes back. And obviously Devon Achane, he's technically labeled as questionable in SaberSim, but he doesn't have an official designation yet. We'll probably see that today. He'll probably be fine. All right, let's get into this breakdown, dude. We've spent enough time talking about this matchup. Let's get into actual DFS stuff here. Let's do it. Break it down. Break it down. So we got quarterback-wise. Let's sort by salary. Patrick Mahomes, 7,100. Tua, 7K. CJ Stroud, 6,800. And the cheapest quarterback by far is Joe Flacco going up against Houston. This feels like a absolute Joe Flacco chalk spot. And I don't necessarily hate it. I'll probably play Flacco stacks for my single entries. He's projected to come in around 40% owned right now. And Patrick Mahomes looking maybe around 25 to 30% owned. What are we doing here, man? Tua at 7K, he's right up there with Mahomes as far as price goes. But his ownership you might see him under 10% on a 2-game slate. That's kind of interesting. But you got to lean, in my opinion, towards Flacco and Stroud on this 2-gamer.
Yeah, so I mean, for cash and single entry, I think you need to start with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco stacks. I think you can kind of get a little bit weird from there, but Joe Flacco, cash, single entry, 3 max, probably like that's where you go that route. Outside of that, man, like I think for GPP, these ownership percentages should be a little bit closer. I love Joe Flacco, but if CJ Stroud's going to be half the ownership projected for a similar amount, like I don't understand like why you wouldn't have a similar amount of him. I understand that additional savings, 68 to 6,100, $700 is going to give you access to maybe some other studs, but it's not like this 2-gamer is crazy price anyways. Remember, none of these are different from the Saturday through Monday slate, which means these prices may not necessarily be optimized for this slate. So like CJ Stroud might still be underpriced based on what we have here. So look, man, finally, I do want to say this real quick. Obviously, play Patrick Mahomes, but Tua at 10%, that's insane. I think you can go get 25% and then just play a shitload of single entry with Flacco and Stroud if you want. Patrick Mahomes, like just run all your GPP with Tua and then run single entry and cash lineups with the other 3 quarterbacks, man. Like that's crazy. 10% is way too low.
Yeah, I mean, I get why it's a weather game or whatever, but you got Tyreek Hill. A 10-yard out can go for 70 yards. Do I expect Tua to throw for 300 yards? No, I expect them to run the ball a lot. But, at that ownership, you got to be kind of interested in a guy like Tua. And I personally think that, like, at least I'm rooting for the Dolphins to win. I personally think the Dolphins can win. And if they win, you got to assume that Tua has at least a slightly above average type day. The question is, how much volume is he going to be out there throwing the ball? I don't know. That's a good question. You probably lean towards Stroud and Flacco playing in a dome and worry a little bit more about these other guys playing in this sub-zero weather. Running backs, sorting by salary here. Devon Achane, highest priced dude on the slate. Obviously, there's a question mark whether or not Raheem Mostert plays, but it seems like he probably should play. But we'll know more as we go along in the week. 6,700 for Mostert. You got Pacheco, 64, Devin Singletary at 5,700, and Jerome Ford at 5,500. These are the starters that we need to talk about. What are we doing here, man? It feels like to me, I'm going to have a minimum of one of Achane or Mostert. Maybe that's a bad strategy. I don't care. I think that in this game, like these guys, Mostert has 18 rushing touchdowns. What does he have? 21 total touchdowns this year, and he's missed some time. Achane, every time he touches the ball, he's live to score a touchdown. I'm getting to minimum of one of these guys for my GPPs. Isaiah Pacheco, I'm going to have a ton of. He's probably going to be 70% owned. Like right now, it looks like Singletary at 5,700. He's projecting well, and based off of SaberSim on a Thursday around 3:30, they think he's going to be 65% owned. There's no freaking chance he's going to be that high owned. But to me, that just screams as of now, where the projections are for Singletary against the Cleveland defense, he's a good play. I think that ownership will drop significantly, and maybe the projection drops. But we got to look into Singletary as well, and then Jerome Ford. So there's some decent running backs on this slate. There's not a lot of depth. Like there's you start to get into CEH and Kareem Hunt and Dameon Pierce. I'm not super interested in, even though maybe have a little bit. Is this a three running back type lineup? Like throw your Mostert in the flex sort of thing, and then get Pacheco and Singletary? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's something that you can consider on a site like this. I'm honestly kind of surprised to see Devin Singletary projected that high. Like again, I really feel like people are gonna flock directly to Nico Collins. You know what I mean? I don't know how many are
Yeah.
gonna be too excited to really pay for Devin Singletary, but if it's 700, that's fine. Look, man, it's a really tight race on what we need here, right? Like we know which running backs are going to get a wealth of the volume. So like I think I think you really got to consider. Here's the one thing I do want to say specifically: is A Chain and Mostert shouldn't be that close in or that far apart in ownership, right? I don't think that HN should be 2.5 times more owned than Mostert, given their prices and what they are going to do on the field. I understand HN is explosive and he's a touchdown threat every time he touches the ball, but Mostert also has 21 rushing touchdowns on the season. So we know he is going to rush the ball and get a touchdown, right? So, like, if again, like on a 2-game slate, if you're looking for something I mean, 10% on a 2-game slate for the guy that had the most touchdowns on the entire season seems unrealistically low.
Yeah.
So, I think you really need to consider something like that. Outside of this other stuff, like I think you can rotate some of these pieces in. A guy that I am considering also is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you want to get real weird and maybe a 150 max, I think he's a guy we're considering at 4,800. Remember, there's only 2 backs in KC.
Yeah, and if you look at Mostert's ownership, I think that's just mainly right now because his projections is basically saying that we don't know if he's going to play or not. So like if he's announced in before the game, and he's not like up to game time decision type thing, we'll see those numbers change. We'll see him projected higher than Devon Achane as far as projected points go. And his ownership will be boosted for sure. Anybody else to talk about here? Like like obviously if Mostert is out, I'm going to be playing a shitload of Devon Achane. And I'm going to be getting to some Jeff Wilson too at 4,200, just because he is the in-between tackles, like goal line type guy. And if he falls in the end zone at 4,200 with low ownership, I'd be interested in him. Anybody else? Dameon Pierce, Kareem Hunt, any of these guys jump out to you? And we haven't really talked about Jerome Ford at 5,500. I'd probably rather get to Singletary, but I think Jerome Ford is going to be a lot lower owned, even though he's getting projected around 40%, which I think that's BS right now.
Yeah, I think Jerome Ford's in play. Look, man, I really don't think you need to get all that crazy here. Like I said, I think maybe set in a 150. Guys like Kareem Hunt, Dameon Pierce, those are guys that are viable. But at those price tags, like I think I might just start looking for a more realistic punt elsewhere and just try and get up into that Jerome, God damn it, that Ford Singletary range. That's where I might try to go with that money instead.
Speaking of crazy, dude, I am not afraid to play Achane and Mostert together for large field GPPs. I don't care. To me, this team needs to come out and run the damn ball. And both of these guys are live to score multiple touchdowns. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill's 8,700, Nico Collins 7K, Amari Cooper 6,800, Rashee Rice 66, and then you got Jalen Waddle at 65. Is this an either or situation where you got to kind of choose between Tyreek and Nico? I don't really think it is, but on a 2-game slate, like let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Tyreek, he still scored a touchdown last week. He didn't look incredible, but he still got there. Now, what does getting there mean on a 2-game slate? Is 15 fantasy points from an $8,700 guy enough? I don't know, but we've seen crazier things happen on these 2-game slates. Is this a situation where maybe you just bite the bullet, play Tyreek Hill? If he's only 40% owned, I'm going to play a lot of him. And then maybe be a little bit under the field on some of these other slates, or maybe, you know what I mean? Like, can we kind of hedge ourselves a little bit and just go a little crazy on Tyreek Hill on this slate? Is there any reason to fade a guy like Tyreek on a 2-gamer?
No, I don't think so. But look, if you want to look at some interesting reasons to, if you want to justify it, over the past 4 weeks, right, he's got no games over 100 total yards and only one total touchdown. So, like, it's kind of crazy to see that fall off, but like the volume is still there. 5 targets, 14, 12, 13. And, the team as a whole hasn't necessarily produced. All that said, like, it's still Tyreek Hill, man. I don't know what to tell you. We've seen it. He'll have two receptions for 186 yards and two touchdowns. That's what he does, and it's hard to overcome if you don't have him. So again, like I really think you play a couple more single entries, right? Maybe if you're thinking about fading a guy like Tyreek Hill, make sure you play a couple more single entries. Get him in those single entries so you're a little bit more hedged if he just tanks your GPP lineups because he's not in there.
Nico Collins, we saw first play of the game last week go deep. What was a 75-yard touchdown? I'm gonna have a lot of Nico Collins, man. I think everybody will, but getting Tyreek, Nico, and Cooper together is just not possible unless you punt at running back and tight end. So we're gonna have to, get 2 out of 3 of these guys. Nico is definitely one of my highest owned guys, but Amari Cooper, he's coming in at around 55% ownership, which is the highest on the slate. I think it's gonna be higher than that. Once it's confirmed that he's playing, he's 6,800, and people just building on their phones. Some of these people that are maybe don't play DFS as much because it's the playoffs are going to remember Amari Cooper had that 275-yard game. I think Amari Cooper to me is more fadeable than any of these other guys, because I think his ownership will be highly inflated. Now, I'm not going to get to none of him, obviously. I'm going to play plenty of him, and I got to see kind of where his projections and ownership come in. But if we think he's going to be like 70% owned, that would be the guy that I would be the easiest way to kind of get onto the field and maybe be a little bit different on a 2-gamer. But I don't know how comfortable I'd be. I'd probably still get to him in my single entries. Thoughts on Nico Collins and Cooper? I feel like Flacco, Cooper, with a run back of Nico at minimum is going to be incredibly high owned. Like that's going to be the highest, owned like 2 or 3 players in a lineup together for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the start of most of your cash builds is what Flacco, Cooper, run back with Collins, and then probably Njoku as well, right? So like I don't know, however you can come up with stacks for this game is probably what you're gonna want to do. But look, man, I think we saw it last week. You're right with that 75-yard touchdown from Nico Collins. Remember, he's been doing well with Davis Mills. Like he was doing great with him as his quarterback last season. He came into this year as just potentially somebody that we'd like to see make a little bit of a connection with CJ Stroud, but he's turned into a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. So I just don't know how you come off of him. He's going to be a staple of most of my lineups for the Saturday only slate.
Rashee Rice is going to be very popular. He's 6,600. He's clearly the number 1 target. He's really the only guy on this entire team that you can rely on almost. Thoughts on Rice, and what are you doing with Jalen Waddle if he's healthy? If Jalen Waddle plays, I'm going to get to a decent amount of him, but I think that really, really helps Tyreek Hill in a game like this. We lost him. I'll answer my own question. Rashee Rice to me is one of these necessary evils. Like I think you could fade him a little bit in GPPs, but he probably, he's only $200 cheaper than Amari Cooper. You probably try to get him into a single entry, but you might not be able to afford it. So I think, Rashee probably comes in around 50% owned, and that's probably justified. I don't think you need to go out of your way to not play him. I don't know how much that you heard, Ellie, but Rashee Rice, thoughts on him? He's going to be high owned. He's only $200 cheaper than Amari Cooper, $400 cheaper than Nico Collins. And Jalen Waddle, if he comes back, dude, I think that really helps both of these guys, Tyreek and Jalen.
Yeah, so look, man, I don't mind Rashee Rice. I just don't know if at that ownership that he's worth not paying up for and getting Amari Cooper or trying to get to Nico Collins. Even then, like I think I'm still a little bit more comfortable getting down to Jalen Waddle, just because again of his explosive upside and the ownership discount that we're projecting him for currently on our Saber Sims projecting him for currently. Man, like, dude, Rashee Rice has been heavily involved, but at the end of the day, like that Kansas City offense has just been too inconsistent for me to want to try and justify 50% ownership. Man, that's a lot.
All right, so Elijah Moore, we did a full wild card first look. I hadn't realized that Elijah Moore had come back last week in that garbage game. I thought he was dead. I thought that guy was completely out. But after that concussion where he was kind of convulsing on the ground, but apparently he's back. He's 4K. He's not even on the injury report. If Cedric Wilson gets the start over Jalen Waddle, he's you got to look at him at 3,800. David Bell is a guy that's interesting with Cedric Tillman out. He's 3,500. Richie James, Justin Watson, a lot of these guys, we always say it, we've said it in years past, maybe not as much, it's not as valid. This year, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes is throwing you the ball, I'm going to be interested in playing you. I don't know how interested I am in playing Justin Watson or Richie James in a game like this, but who else are they going to throw the ball to? You got Hardman there as well. What are we doing here, man, in some of this lower range? I don't love a lot of these value plays here, minus maybe David Bell and maybe Hutchinson. If we get Bobby Trees or if we get Noah Brown out, maybe we see some more Hutchinson. But what are we doing value-wise for wide receivers?
Yeah, man. Look, for GPP, I think all of them have justifiable cases. Obviously, you're kind of just looking for these guys at discounts of ownership. That said, man, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these random KFC, Kansas City Chief wide receivers end up with a touchdown. Justin Watson at 15% seems a little high, but I won't mind taking stabs on guys like Richie James. Richie James is going to be on the field for punt returns and shit like that, right? So it literally just needs one person. One person on that team has to catch one of these goddamn passes that Patrick Mahomes throws, and it's a touchdown. I don't know, man. So I think you can take stabs on the KC guys in GPP. Outside of that, I'm not comfortable with John Mechie. I think whoever the other guy is, I can never remember the other. Hutchinson. I think Hutch is a fine stab as well. Outside of that, man, I think I might prioritize a little bit more of a balanced build than playing too much of these punts.
If you're as one-offs, I don't like any of these rando KC pass catchers. But if you're doing Patrick Mahomes stacks, maybe you get a minimum of one of Rashi or Kelsey, and then you sprinkle in some of these randos in as pass catchers. Tight ends. Speaking of Travis Kelsey, 6,100. It seems like the ownership here is kind of spread out for tight ends. This doesn't feel like a two tight end build sort of slate, but look, you got David Njoku, who's probably the best play on the slate at 5,600. Dalton Schultz, 4,400. And Travis Kelsey, 6,100. Then you got guys like Durham Smythe, who, yes, he's been getting involved more, but this team does not throw to their tight ends. Not really interested in getting to any of these guys. Maybe a Brevin Jordan if he fits the lineup at 2,500, the bare minimum. We've seen him score once or twice this year. He kind of gets involved in the pass game. What do we do for tight ends, dude? To me, Kelsey, if he's coming in under 30% owned, I'm going to jam him in quite a bit. If we see projections change a little bit here. But Njoku, to me, Njoku and Schultz are probably my higher owned tight ends on this slate. But I don't think I'm going to be doing a lot of two tight end sets. I don't know. What do you think about that? Getting some Kelsey and Njoku or Njoku and Schultz at those prices in a lineup could be interesting.
Yeah, man. On a 2-gamer, I'm not necessarily as against it. On a 10-game slate or something along those lines, it's very unlikely that another tight end ends up in the optimal unless it's an elite punt play, or a week where Kittle and Kelsey go out together or something like that. But this is a slate where I think you can consider it, especially if you're sitting around 5,700 and you have to decide between a couple of guys you may not be comfortable with. Njoku would be a perfect person to throw into that. But another way to kind of ease your pain here is I kind of like playing tight end just based on the stack, unless there's an obvious tight end play. If I'm going to fade David Njoku or in Travis Kelsey in a specific lineup, then I'm going to play Schultz probably because I have Stroud, or I might get a couple Smythe because I have a Tua lineup.
Yeah.
Now, guys like Smythe and Noah Gray, and I'm not going to include Brevin Jordan, but Smythe, Noah Gray, guys like that, I'm only going to include in quarterback stats. A guy like Brevin Jordan, he might be an actual comfortable punt play at the tight end position. I don't mind getting a little bit of exposure to him just naked, just to clean up that 2,500. That said, I'm going to have a shitload of Houston, Cleveland, so I doubt I'll have any naked Brevin Jordan.
Yeah, for sure. Defense. So Browns are 3,300, Texans 3K, Chiefs 29, Dolphins 28. feels like, like these totals are pretty similar. We don't have like actual rain or snow happening in that weather game. But you have to think that, at least on paper, it feels like this dome Houston Cleveland game has the potential to score more points. And, I think this is a spread out situation. I don't think there's one defense on here that you're absolutely in love with. At least I don't think so. Like maybe the Chiefs, you can argue here in the cold weather, going up against Miami, who's a little banged up offensively. If they get all their guys back, maybe they get a little decrease from me. But what do we do with these defenses? To me, I feel like I spread it out, and the defense is like one of these last pieces that I jam in based off of the rest of my lineup. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing is like if you think one of these defenses has a higher propensity to score, then I think you might want to prioritize them. Outside of that, I think we know that the Browns are probably, unjustified at being one of the. I mean, they're right there in the middle of the pack, being at 25% ownership. I don't know if you necessarily could warrant that, given their price 3,300 and just the amounts of points they allow per game. I guess if I'm being honest, I like the Dolphins defense here a little bit. I don't see why they should be in the teens when everybody else is in the high 20s. When it can't be that unsimilar than what the Chiefs or the Texans are able to put out, right? But again, that's based on the implied totals. Both games are at 44 points. But if you expect the under for Dolphins Chiefs, I really think the Dolphins are underowned.
All right, let's look at value here. So we won't spend a whole lot of time with this. We want to get to building. But when it comes to value, like just sorting by value right now, Schultz, Nico Collins, Devin Singletary, they're all at the top of the list here. When it comes to actual, though, value, like cheap guys that we think can get there, there's not a ton that I'm super comfortable with. We're waiting on news, obviously. If Houston's wide receivers sit out, maybe you're interested in a little bit of Mechie or Hutchinson, but I don't think you can rely on those guys. Maybe you get those guys involved in your CJ Stroud stacks. But besides that, like who you thinking like low end price wise? There's just not a lot. Like Elijah Moore is interesting at his price. Xavier Hutchinson at the wide receiver minimum, if he actually gets run in the slot over Bobby Trees, maybe. But who else are you looking at, dude? I think this slate is priced efficiently enough, or it's priced to the point where there's a lot of guys that are relatively priced that absolutely have high ceilings. Like a guy like a Nico Collins 7K, at some of these running backs. I don't know that we have to get too crazy with these value dart throws, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think you can kind of keep it pretty tight with more of a balanced build. And I also think that's why some of these initial Joe Flacco ownership projections are so drastically high, right? He gives you so much flexibility in building that I don't think you need to stress quite as much. Sorry, son just got home. So if you hear a stampede, that's the dog, all excited to see him.
All right, man. Let's get into lineups here. Throw us a like, guys. We appreciate you. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of this football season. I think it's totally possible. And obviously we got a lot more content coming for this wild card setup this weekend. We've got the 3-gamer show that we're going to do. We got the Monday Night Football show we're going to do. And for YouTube members, we're doing the, Sunday night Rams versus Lions. We're doing that showdown slate. That's about an hour long show where we break down everything with that team, with those teams. That'll be for YouTube members specifically. So make sure you guys are subscribed. And if you're interested in joining our YouTube members, it's $3.99 a month. It helps support the channel. All right, let's build a single entry, dude. Let's start with Joe Flacco. Let's get Nico and Amari. Let's start there. I think everybody's starting there. Now, how do we differentiate ourselves enough for a single entry that we're comfortable with a high floor and grabbing some guys that we're confident with, but also not necessarily wanting to dupe with 20 other people in a single entry? How do we get there? We got to make decisions here. Let's start with running back. So I'm still going to follow the same route here, in my opinion, like Mostert or Achane or Pacheco. Like for single entry, maybe I'm not going to make a rule like I would for GPPs, but I think we probably start with Pacheco here, right?
Yeah, throw in Pacheco.
All right, are we interested in getting to Achane or Mostert, or would we rather just pay up for Tyreek and see if we can even make that happen?
No, I think we could probably go Mostert, to be honest.
All right, if Mostert's active, we're going to get him in there. So where are we going here? So we got Flacco and Cooper. We don't have to massively go crazy with stacks, like game stacks specifically, but we probably want to get at least one other pass catcher with Flacco in here, right? Is that Njoku here at tight end?
Yeah, it's Njoku.
All right, so we got 3,800 apiece. So we're going to have to find some value here. We're not playing Tyreek Hill, unfortunately.
Let's throw in defense.
All right, what do you want to do for defense for this particular lineup?
I think we can do what? Chiefs?
Let's put in Chiefs.
Dolphins?
Yeah, let's put in Chiefs. So we got 4,200 apiece. So do you want to punt right off the bat and see where we're at? Like find somebody who we're comfortable with, like a David Bell at 3,500. If we get the news, I know that's 4 pass catchers. Maybe we don't go that route. What are you thinking here? Elijah Moore?
Yeah, try Eli.
Maybe that's too much.
I think you're gonna have to pull out either Pacheco or Mostert and put in a Singletary.
That's kind of where I ended up getting. Yeah, I think you're right. Let's for single entry. Let's try this. Let's try Pacheco, Singletary. That leaves us with a little bit more flexibility. Can we get to one of these pass catchers from this Miami KC game? Like, can we get to Rashee Rice at 6,600? I think it's possible. We're gonna have to punt though at that flex spot. Maybe it's worth it. 2,900. And we're gonna have to get one of these tight ends.
Yeah, so you're either looking at Brevin Jordan or you have to go from Chiefs to Dolphins to get to 3K and get min-priced wide receiver.
Is there any min-priced wide receiver that we would be even relatively interested in? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
All right, so what do we change here? We got to go down from Rice, or we can go down from Njoku. You want to do that? You want to just try that and get Schultz at save $1,200? That could be enough.
Yeah.
So that leaves us in the flex. That leaves us with Elijah Moore. So that actually works out. You pull Njoku out. Now I like Njoku a lot, but maybe in a build like this, that really makes you different enough for a single entry for some of these like $5 or $15 single entries where you need to be a little bit different. So we got Flacco, Pacheco, Singletary, Collins, Amari Cooper, Rashee Rice, Schultz, Elijah Moore, and the Chiefs defense. Feels like a good starting point. I'm sure there's a lot of different variations that we could do here to get a little bit better, try to get Tyreek involved, try to get these Miami running backs involved. But I'm okay with not playing one of these Miami running backs in my single entry or multiple single entries, and then I'm going to be jamming the shit out of them for my GPPs. All right, let's build some GPPs. So where do you want to go here, man? You want to go Stroud? You want to go Tua? You want to see how a Patrick Mahomes build looks?
Yeah, let's start with Pat.
All right, let's start with Pat. So I think I mentioned it earlier. Like we can do a Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce stack along with Mahomes, but for GPPs, I feel like we should pick one or the other and go with one of these, Justin Watson types instead. Or you know what I mean?
I mean, I like that. Let's just throw in Justin Watson and Travis Kelce. I think Travis Kelce was projected for pretty soft ownership, man. So
where the hell is Watson? He's 3,400. Let's get Kelce. All right, it's a good starting point here. How crazy do we have to get for GPPs, do you think? Like, do we need to go massive game stacks here? Can we sprinkle in like 50-50 from each game sort of situation? Like, we're going to want to run back at least 2 guys probably here from Miami potentially. I don't know. What do you think? Where do we go Miami-wise on a run back?
Throw in both running backs, man. Let's see what we can do with both running backs.
Nice. All right, let's get to Nico Collins, probably. I know we're not playing Tyreek here. We probably want to get to that, but not for this build right now. Amari Cooper? Or do you want to go to Njoku?
Yeah. No, can we form Amari? Put in Amari.
Well, let's find out. Let's grab, I guess we're going to have to grab a defense here. I guess you could do Chiefs defense. Let's just put them in there for now and see if that's even possible. 3,200 in the flex spot. Obviously, you most likely want your flex spot to be that night game so you have a little flexibility there. But you got a John Mechie situation. Besides that, I mean, that's even scary too. What if we went Richie James? What if instead of Watson, we went to Richie James? Does that do anything for us? Here, hang on a second. I just lost him. Where's he at? Richie James, where are you at, bro? Let's put Richie James in. What does that do for us in the flex? It doesn't do anything. We still at Mechie. What would you change here? Do you want to pull out one of the Miami running backs? Even though I like doing that. I like doubling up for tournaments with those guys. You want to pull one of them out?
No, pull out Amari Cooper.
Okay.
And then what? You want to
double?
Okay, let's try Njoku at the flex and then see what we have wide receiver.
Well, let's switch it. Let's go Njoku at the tight end. Let's go Kelsey at the flex in that later spot. Damn it. There you go. Click it. 4,500 in this last wide receiver spot here. Could go Elijah Moore too. Could. He's right there. Wilson, David Bell even as a punt. Cedric Wilson if Jalen Waddle's out. There's some options there. You want to build with Tua here as our last build?
Yeah, let's try one with Tua.
All right, let's just go crazy, dude. Let's go Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle. All right. Or we could, instead of Waddle, we could go Achane. Maybe if you think he can get involved in the pass game, or how do you want to spread ourselves out here a little bit? What do you think here? I don't hate doing a running back with Tua.
I mean, how about this? Why don't you just throw in Achane anyway? So we're gonna do a weird one here. Let's not play any Chiefs in this lineup because I think there's a world like for GPP you can build for an onslaught and the Chiefs getting blown out. And then let's throw in the Miami defense, and then I think we just run the rest of this back with Miami Houston if we can.
Nice. Nico, Njoku, or Schultz. Probably we probably got to go Schultz here with our pricing.
Yeah. And then can you do Singletary?
We can't. We got to have at least 2,500 left. So that gets us. It doesn't really get us much. We might have to pull Waddle out of here.
Yeah. Is there anybody? Yeah, let's pull out Waddle then.
And I don't really want to replace him with another Dolphins guy, to be honest. Let's just grab. Where was Waddle? He's 6,500. You want to grab like Elijah Moore?
Yeah, let's throw in Eli Moore and then Devin Singletary.
3,600 in this last flex spot here. So Robert Woods there. You got David Bell. I don't love getting to Justin Watson or Richie James as a one-off, really, but Mechie's there potentially. There's a lot of options here. All right, well, I think that does it for us. What'd you learn, Ellie? It seems like there's a lot of options. We're waiting on some injury news, obviously, but it feels like there's tons of flexibility for building. Make sure you guys are in that Discord. As we get closer to lock, we're going to get more injury news. We're going to get inactives an hour and a half before these games. Obviously, make sure you're late swapping any of your stuff to react to news for that night game. Ellie, what'd you learn, man? It's going to be cold as shit in Kansas City. I think everybody knows that. I'm not afraid to get to some GPP stacks, like pass onslaughts. But generally speaking, I really like the running backs in that game. What'd you learn?
Yeah, man. Look, I think we kind of confirmed a lot of things. That Houston-Cleveland Browns game is going to be really chalky. But right now, I mean, seeing Tua being so low owned, like I think there's going to be ways to get different, despite it only being a 2-gamer. So I'm pretty excited for this one.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a fun one. Like I said, make sure you guys are in the Discord. Throw us a like on the way out. Let's get to 100 likes for this one. We appreciate you guys. We will see you for the Sunday 3-gamer.